As the plane soared above an unfamiliar region in China, a passenger gazed out of the window, capturing a captivating video. A sense of awe and curiosity filled the air as the passenger's camera focused on a peculiar sight.
High-angle object. The Defense Department has confirmed that leaked photos and videos of an unidentified aerial phenomenon taken in 2019 are indeed legitimate images of unexplained objects. Photos and videos of triangle-shaped objects blinking and moving through the clouds were taken by Navy personnel, Pentagon spokeswoman Sue Go said in a statement to CNN. She also confirmed that photos of 3 unidentified flying objects, one spear-shaped, another acorn-shaped, and one characterized as a metallic blimp, were also taken by Navy personnel. As we have said before, to maintain operation security and to avoid disclosing information that may be useful to potential adversaries, DoD does not discuss publicly the details of either the observations or the examinations of reported incursions into our training ranges or designated airspace, including those incursions initially designed as UAP, she said. She also said that the Identified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, created to investigate UFO sightings observed by the military, has included these incidents in their ongoing examinations. Number 9. Drone footage. On April 19, 2023, the Pentagon released another video featuring MQ-9 drone footage from the Middle East depicting a UAP. In the footage dated July 12, 2022, which the US Defense Department shared online, the US military's MQ-9 Reaper drone somewhere in the Middle East, exactly where wasn't disclosed, can be seen monitoring a strange metallic silver orb-like object flying around below it at some seemingly high speeds while the drone's camera tries to follow it. This footage is significant because while there have been previously declassified US military footage of UFOs, those were all taken by pilots in manned aircrafts. This one, however, was taken by a drone. However, this isn't the only time this particular UFO has been seen. Apparently, there has been many other sightings of a strange metallic orb in the Middle East. Sean M. Kirkpatrick, director of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, told a Senate Armed Services subcommittee that it resembled a small metallic orb. He added there isn't an explanation for, but the reason for is due to lack of available data. It is going to be virtually impossible to fully identify that just based on that video, he said, according to ABC News. Number 8. ADAR. The Pentagon's new Office for Investigating Potential UFO Sightings received hundreds of news reports in 2022, and while it can explain more than half of these events, a sizable chunk remains a mystery. Within the new batch of sightings, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office and the Office of Director of National Intelligence say they're focusing on some 171 cases, including some in which objects appear to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities and require further analysis. Since it was formed last summer, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office has received 366 reports of UAP. That total reflects 247 new UAP reports and another 119 that occurred before March 2021 but hadn't been included in the earlier report. The new numbers indicate a steep rise in UAP sightings. Now, the report released in June 2021 lists just 144 reports covering a 17-year period. With the subsequent additions, 510 UAP reports were in their files at the end of August 2022. Officials say they believe the rise in UAP reports is due to the US government's effort to destigmatize the topic of UAP and instead recognize the potential risks the phenomenon poses, both with aviation hazard and potential advisable activity, such as foreign surveillance efforts. Number 7. Dancing lights. On January 29, 2023, Canadian air traffic controllers and pilots couldn't identify 2 white lights moving in a circular pattern reported over Canada's Northwest Territories. Good evening, just wondering, do you got 2 planes that are just to the east of your field doing circuits or maneuvers? A crew member aboard a Canadian North flight headed to Yellowknife asked air traffic controllers. Negative, I have no reported traffic in the area. The Yellowknife air traffic controller replied, do you have a visual on something? The crew responded somewhat hesitantly, yeah, we're looking at 2 lights dancing around here to the east of your field. They're above us about I don't know what. We're not seeing them on the TCAS, traffic collision avoidance system, but we can see lights moving around. Then there's a pause before the crew member on the radio back say, we're not crazy. No, we believe you, the air traffic controller replies, and the sighting remains unexplained. Number 6. Over New Mexico. On February 21st, 2021, a pilot flying over New Mexico at the altitude of 37,000 feet reported seeing a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type thing moving really fast over the top of them, according to published audio. American Airlines confirmed that the radio transmission came from Flight 2292. The FAA a few days later stated, a pilot reported seeing an object over New Mexico shortly after noon local time on Sunday, February 21st, 2021. FAA air traffic controllers did not see any objects in the area of their radar scopes. Seems like air traffic can never see these objects, but the pilots can, and I can't tell if that's better or worse. Number 5. The coin incident. At 7:30 p.m. on October 18th, 1973, American Airlines Flight 21 encountered a UFO near Mansfield, Ohio, and reported it. This would be the first of dozens of sightings reported in that area that night. However, the most astonishing one took place 3 hours later and became known as the coin incident. Sometime after 10:30 p.m., an Army Reserve helicopter piloted by Captain Lawrence Coyne and a crew of 3 men was flying from Columbus to Cleveland when somewhere around Mansfield they noticed a red light on the horizon. They then realized that the object was heading straight for them at a high rate of speed. Coyne quickly descended to avoid collision, but as the men were preparing for impact, the object came to a halt in front of them and projected a green pyramid-shaped beam over the helicopter. At the same time this was happening, the men reported the helicopter being pulled up towards the UFO. However, it then let go and darted out of sight. The incident lasted 5 minutes. The men described a gray metallic-looking dome-shaped object with a red light on one end and white light on the other. Now, interestingly, after the incident, according to one crew member, the helicopter never worked right again. Now, this whole incident was seen from the ground by a mother and her 2 children who pulled their car over to watch what was going on. They reported seeing the helicopter chasing an object they said looked like a blimp, pear-shaped and as big as a school bus. Number 4. Trumbull County UFO Incident. Featured on the History Channel and numerous UFO documentaries, the Trumbull County UFO incident in northeast Ohio is exceptional because it was witnessed by numerous police officers and a 911 dispatcher, all of whom were being recorded as they spoke back and forth about the strange events unfolding on the evening of December 14th, 1994. It was also seen by many members of the public as well. Now, around midnight, Trumbull County 911 began receiving calls from residents about a strange low-flying light in the sky. The dispatcher sent out Liberty Township police officers to investigate, and one of them was Sergeant Toby Maloro, who saw a light. He got out of his car and looked up to see what he described as a giant circular-shaped object and intensely bright in the center section. It made no sound at all, and the object was there for about 30 seconds before moving away. Shaken, the sergeant decided to chase the object, as did many other police officers in the area. In total, at least 14 law enforcement officers saw the object at night, with all of them discussing it openly on their radios. Number 3. Navy pilots. Recently, 2 former Navy pilots were interviewed by 60 Minutes on CBS News about a UFO sighting over the Pacific Ocean in 2004. Commander Dave Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich spotted the unidentified object during a training exercise but were unable to classify it. Dave described it as a little white tic-tac looking object, adding that it lacked conventional exhaust plumes and had no wings or visible markings. It also moved erratically, the pilot said. In an interview with NBC News, Dave described the 2004 encounter, calling the object the strangest, most obscure thing I've ever seen flying. As soon as we look down, we see the white water, and then we see this white tic-tac. It's pointing north-south, and it's just going forward, back, left, right, he said, adding that it was bouncing around like a ping pong ball. Dave said he approached the mysterious object to take a closer look, and it began mirroring his movements. Then when the pilot got within half a mile of the UFO, it suddenly vanished. My question is, what was he going to do if he got closer? This whole story is just crazy. Number 2. Multiple objects in the sky. Ryan Graves, a former Navy pilot who testified that he witnessed UAP with his own eyes, has called on President Joe Biden to investigate the mysterious object spotted in American airspace. Ryan, a former fighter pilot, explained that after 2014, when upgrades were made to our radar system, our squadron made a startling discovery. There were unknown objects in our airspace, and these were not mere balloons like the Chinese spy balloon that dominated the country's attention in February. These were no mere balloons, they could hold their position, appearing motionless, despite Category 4 hurricane force winds of 120 knots. They did not have any visible means of lift or control surfaces, in other words, nothing that resembled normal aircraft with wings, flaps, or engines. These are not isolated incidents, Ryan said. We have a real UFO problem, and it's not balloons. The point is that we don't have a clear understanding of what's above our heads as we thought we did. There are uncertainties up there that we have to deal with. If we don't do it, our adversaries are going to take advantage of that uncertainty, that weakness, to spy on us with various means, as we've seen. It's pretty clear. If there are things over our head and we're not sure what they are, well, we need to figure it out. If they're adversarial, it's a national security issue. We have mechanisms for that. If it's not a national security issue, then it's not an adversarial platform, then it's a matter for scientific inquiry. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this scares me a little bit. And coming in at number 1 is leaked video. A leaked Navy video captured in July 2019 showed a sphere-shaped unidentified object flying over water near San Diego. The footage, obtained by a documentary filmmaker and shared with NBC News, appeared to show a mysterious object flying for a few minutes before disappearing into the water. The video was captured by a Navy aircraft and recorded in the USS Amistad Combat Information Center, according to the filmmaker Jeremy Corbell. The clip appears to show a spherical object flying above the water for a few minutes near San Diego before it vanishes. It splashed, military personnel can be heard saying in the video. The Defense Department confirmed that the clip was recorded by Navy personnel and said it will be reviewed by the Pentagon's Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force, a panel established last year to gain insight into the nature and origins of such objects.
In spot we have the 1976 Tehran incident. The 1976 Tehran UFO incident is a notable case in UFOlogy that took place on September 19, 1976. The incident involved a luminous object that was observed hovering over the city by two F-4 Phantom II jet interceptors of the Iranian Air Force. The object was detected on radar and appeared to be capable of jamming the communication systems of the jets. The pilots reported that they saw a brightly lit diamond-shaped object that emitted a green light, and they attempted to engage it with missiles. However, the object evaded their attempts and quickly disappeared. At a pilots conference in 2007, one of the pilots in this incident, Parvez Jafari, said he attempted to fire at the UFO, but something strange was preventing him from doing so. He said, quote, "My weapons jammed and my radio communications garbled." The incident was investigated by the Iranian government and the US Defense Intelligence Agency, and it has been the subject of much speculation and debate among UFO enthusiasts. Some argue that the incident was evidence of extraterrestrial activity, while others suggest it may have been a secret military experiment or some kind of atmospheric phenomenon. Despite the official investigation, the incident remains unresolved and its true nature remains a mystery. In our number 9 spot today, we have the McMinnville UFO photographs. The McMinnville UFO photographs are a series of 2 photographs taken by Paul and Evelyn Trent on May 11, 1950 in McMinnville, Oregon. The photos depict a metallic disc-shaped object in the sky with trees and buildings visible in the foreground. The Trents claimed that they saw the object hovering in the sky and were able to capture it on camera. The photographs quickly gained widespread attention and were widely circulated in newspapers and magazines, and they were also examined by several experts, including the US Air Force, which conducted an investigation known as Project Blue Book. Famous project here on Most Amazing Top 10. The Trents maintained that the photographs were genuine and that they had not tampered with them in any way. However, some skeptics have suggested that the photographs may have been hoaxed or that the objects in the photographs were just a common object. Despite the controversy surrounding the photographs, however, they remain one of the most famous and well-known UFO sightings in history. The photographs have been the subject of numerous articles, books, and documentaries, and have inspired countless discussions and debates about the existence of UFOs and extraterrestrial life. In our number 8 spot today, we have the USS Nimitz Tic Tac UFO incident. This UFO sighting comes from 2004. On November 14th of that year, the USS Princeton noticed an unknown aircraft of some sort that was about 100 miles off of the coast of San Diego. For 2 weeks prior to this, the crew had been tracking a strange flying object that would start out at about 80,000 feet before extremely quickly dropping to hover right above the Pacific Ocean. Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate went over in 2 fighter jets, and when they arrived, they saw what at first appeared to be churning water while there was an oval shape just below the surface. After this, the white oval-shaped object appeared above the water, but it had no markings on it. Like no windows, nothing that would indicate an engine, no wings, and the infrared monitors on the jets didn't pick up any sort of exhaust. The commander and lieutenant commander tried to intercept this strange aircraft, but it very quickly flew away and reappeared on the monitor 60 miles away. And when I say quickly, I mean it was moving at 3 times the speed of sound and over twice the speed of the fighter jets. So, faster than any kind of technology we currently have. We still don't know exactly what it was, but it certainly was beyond our current capabilities. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Aguadilla Airport incident. The Aguadilla Airport UFO incident occurred on April 25, 2013, when a strange object was spotted hovering above the Rafael Hernandez Airport in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. The object was initially detected by radar and later confirmed by security cameras as a glowing, unidentified object that appeared to be traveling at a low altitude. The object was described as being around 4 to 5 feet in length, and it moved very quickly and very erratically. It was also observed to emit a bright white light and appeared to be changing shape. The incident attracted widespread attention and was investigated by several government agencies, including the Federal Aviation Administration and the Department of Homeland Security. The object was ultimately classified as an unidentified flying object, or UFO, and no explanation was given for its presence in the area. It is even said that a U.S. Customs and Border Protection aircraft actually captured infrared video of the incident that was given to the Scientific Coalition for UFOlogy by a whistleblower. This video is said to show the UFO traveling at super low altitudes, sometimes lower than the treetops, but at speeds close to 100 miles per hour. The Aguadilla Airport UFO incident is considered one of the most significant UFO sightings in recent history due to the high level of documentation and the involvement of government agencies. It continues to be a topic of discussion and speculation among UFO enthusiasts and researchers, and has contributed to ongoing efforts to uncover the truth about the nature and origin of UFO sightings around the world. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Project Blue Book sighting. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Richard French was once tasked with being an investigator for Project Blue Book, which was the name used to describe a study of UFOs conducted by the United States Air Force from March 1952 to December 17, 1969, when the project was terminated. Okay, we talk about Project Blue Book a lot. You gotta know what it is. While his job was meant to be to investigate and essentially debunk UFO sightings, later in life he took to Congress to stand up and explain his own UFO encounter that he was never able to explain away. The moment that truly stuck with him all of these years took place back in 1952 when he was sent off to Newfoundland after there were reports of a UFO that had crashed off of the coast of St. John's. As he arrived to the scene, there were at least 100 people who all stood and stared into the water, and as he was able to follow their gaze and see what they were all looking at, he couldn't quite believe his eyes. He recalled the water being quite clear, and under it you could see 2 circular crafts, each one approximately 18 feet in diameter. He said that they were both floating just below the surface of the water, no more than 20 feet from the shore, and not only this, but he could also see 2 beings with the crafts. He said, quote, "The first thing I saw was the UFOs, and it was apparent to me that they were doing something to the craft, and I couldn't really tell what because they were on the bottom side of it and not visible to me except when they would occasionally get over to the side where I could see them." He claims he watched on as the beings worked on the craft until one of them raised out of the water and disappeared, but not before accelerating to speeds in the neighborhood of 2,500 to 3,000 miles per hour. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Coyne-Mansfield helicopter incident. The Coyne-Mansfield helicopter UFO incident occurred on October 18, 1973, when 4 members of the Ohio Army National Guard were flying in a helicopter over Mansfield, Ohio. Suddenly, they encountered a large metallic disc-shaped object that was hovering in the sky. The object began to move towards the helicopter, causing the crew to take evasive maneuvers. Despite their efforts, the object continued to follow them, eventually passing overhead and disappearing into the distance. The crew reported the incident to their superiors, and an investigation was launched by the military and the Federal Aviation Administration. The incident received significant media attention, and it remains one of the most compelling UFO sightings on record. What makes this incident particularly intriguing is the credibility of the witnesses. The crew were all experienced pilots with military training, and their account of the incident was corroborated by radar data and other witnesses on the ground. Despite extensive investigations, no satisfactory explanation has ever been offered for what they saw that day. In our number 4 spot today, we have Apollo 11. So we can sit here on Earth all day and talk about the potential for alien life and UFOs, but who would know more than the people who have actually been to space, which are of course astronauts. Definitely on the list of coolest and scariest jobs in the world, there haven't been a ton of people who have had the unbelievable privilege of experiencing space firsthand, but there are even less of them who have claimed to see something that seems completely unexplainable. People who have claimed these sorts of things include Edgar Mitchell, Catherine Coleman, and Dr. Brian O'Leary. The very interesting part about many of these claims is that they also include some sort of government cover-up as well with their claims. There was also Buzz Aldrin, who spoke about his Apollo 11 experience, and he detailed the crew seeing something flying alongside them, and at first they believed it was the final stage of a detached rocket, but then Mission Control confirmed that it was actually 6,000 miles away from them, leaving them with no answers on what the flying object could be. I can't imagine going to space at all, let alone encountering a UFO flying right beside you. Also, I can't believe that I hadn't heard of that story before, because to me, that sounds like full-blown alien contact. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Go Faster video. In 2017, after the existence of the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program became more well known, a video was released of an encounter between an FA-18 Super Hornet and some sort of unidentified flying object. This video was the third in a series of 3 videos, and there weren't a ton of details released about exactly what happened during this encounter. Using the Raytheon Advanced Targeting Forward-Looking Infrared Pod, they were able to capture an extremely fast-moving white oval that was around 45 feet long. The oval had no wings and didn't appear to have any kind of exhaust either. They were tracking the UFO at an altitude of 25,000 feet just above the Atlantic Ocean, and then they were shocked as the craft rotated on its axis and flew away. There was no explanation released with the footage because it truly is unbelievable and currently unexplainable. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Delphos Ring incident. The Delphos Ring UFO incident occurred on November 2nd, 1971 in Delphos, Kansas, when a family witnessed a strange object hovering over their farm. The UFO emitted a bright light that illuminated the surrounding area and left a glowing ring in the ground after it disappeared. The family reported the incident to the local sheriff, who took a sample of the ring for analysis. Investigations were conducted by several experts, including the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, who collected soil samples and found that the ring was caused by the removal of topsoil, which had been exposed to a high amount of heat. Additionally, a high level of radiation was also detected at the site. The incident received widespread media coverage and sparked debates about the existence of extraterrestrial life and the possibility of alien visitation. Some skeptics argued that the incident could have been caused by natural phenomena or a hoax, but the witnesses maintained that they saw a genuine UFO. Despite the years of investigation, it's been no conclusive explanation for the incident has been found, leaving the mystery of the Delphos Ring UFO unsolved. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Shag Harbor incident. This incident took place on October 4th, 1967, when an unknown object crashed into the water near Shag Harbor, which is a tiny town in Nova Scotia. There were at least 11 people who witnessed this object as it crashed, and many people claimed to have heard a whistling sound followed by a loud bang when the crash took place. The witnesses that claimed to have seen the UFO were all doing a bunch of different things at the time. One couple was just sitting out on their porch, but the 2 witnesses that really get me are a flight pilot and a ship captain. On Air Canada Flight 305, First Officer Robert Ralph pointed out to Captain Pierre Charbonneau that there was something strange out the left side of the aircraft. They reported an object tracking along on a parallel course a few miles away and described it as a brilliantly lit rectangular object with a string of smaller lights trailing it. Shortly after they first noticed it, there was a large but silent explosion near the unknown object, and then 2 minutes later there was a second explosion, but this one faded to a blue cloud. As for the ship captain, Captain Leo Howard Mercy, he saw 4 blips on its Deca radar that were totally stationary. This led to him looking up to the sky, and this is when he saw 4 bright objects sitting in a rectangular formation about 28 kilometers from the vessel's window. He wasn't the only one who saw it on board either. The entire crew of nearly 20 fishermen stood on deck and watched. A man named Laurie Wickens was another one of the witnesses, and he and some friends ended up calling the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, because they saw a huge object floating in the Atlantic Ocean about 1,000 feet offshore. This is all super weird, and not only the RCMP but also the Royal Canadian Navy and the Royal Canadian Air Force became involved in the investigation, but nothing was ever recovered or found. It was also revealed that all commercial, private, and military aircrafts along the eastern seaboard were accounted for, so what could have all those witnesses seen? Since they never officially identified what it was, in the official Government of Canada documents, it is listed as a UFO.
The orange disc. In 2020, a report of a UFO over the Vatican in 2007 came to life. UFO hunter Scott Waring believes the unidentified flying object's shape closely resembles a flying saucer. He said on his UFO Sightings daily blog, "This report is from 2007 but was just reported today at MUFON. An orange disc was caught in a photograph over Vatican City. UFOs have been seen over the Vatican before, but orange UFOs are usually seen in South America and Central America, so this is odd. The object is a disc viewed from the side. The disc doesn't have a classic hump, but instead its upper center comes to a point and lower center is flat, no bulge at all. For me, I can clearly see this is a disc. It's a little in focus, so it's not that far back. It looks to be about 10 meters, 33 feet across. If it was traveling fast, it may have gotten caught by accident. This is absolutely real and absolutely alien in origin. Then Scott said the Vatican's stance of alien life comes mostly from scientific analysis of chemicals, substances, and textbook strategies of old. Vatican astronomers would never confirm any UFO as being real unless it landed in Vatican City. Number 9. First crash ever. The world's first crash of an unidentified flying object, UFO, happened in Italy in 1933 during the reign of Benito Mussolini, Italian researcher Robert Pinotti claimed. Roberto spoke to the Daily Mail and even shared evidence to back his claims. Now, Roberto is the president of the National Ufological Center in Italy, and his research has been met with skepticism within Italy itself. Now, Roberto and his colleague have been working to learn more about the 1933 crash in Lombardy and received some original secret documents about it in 1996. The documents were sent to the researchers by an unidentified source who claimed to have inherited these from a relative who lived at the time and was part of the secret department allegedly set up by Mussolini to study the saucer. Now, the documents also include handwritten memos that have a sketch and description of the UFO with portholes on the side. Number 8. Donut UFO. In 1978, unidentified flying objects that gave off green, red, and white lights and had a donut-like hole in the middle were reported and in some cases photographed at dozens of places between Sicily and Milan in the north. It was reported by none other than the officers on duty in the operation of police headquarters. Dozens of people called, all with the same message. You see an enormous beam of green light just overhead. A lieutenant and non-commissioned officer, driven by curiosity, as they said later, ran out on the terrace and one exclaimed, "I see an enormous beam of green light." A bank clerk, Nino Raffagino, said he spotted an object just before midnight, made a dash for his 1000mm telephoto lens, and came up with a series of pictures that appeared in the press. One taken when the object was stationary, according to Nino, showed a disc of light with a hole in the middle. Officers that were alerted by citizens' calls also snapped pictures and sent them to the newspapers. Taken while the object appeared to be moving, they showed a long, wide streak of light in the dark sky. Number 7. Recent sighting. A low-quality blurred image said to depict a UFO or a weird object escorted by 2 military aircraft over northeastern Italy made the news. The photograph was published by some local media outlets, which reported that around 7:20 p.m. on March 23, 2021, several witnesses noticed 2 aircrafts coming from the southeast and heading northwest, escorting from distance what was described as a large square or diamond-shaped object which incorporated from 10 to 12 fixed yellow lights. According to the reports, the object traveled very fast and left behind an intense trail, and the only noise that was perceived was that of the 2 planes flying at a lower altitude than the square object at a much lower speed. 1.5 minutes was the average duration of these sightings, enough to spark discussion of what this mysterious object was. So much so, the photograph was also brought to the attention of the Italian for National UFO Center, which started its own investigation. Number 6. 20-second sighting. There are episodes in Italy which whole crowds have witnessed inexplicable phenomena. On October 13, 2016, a series of people spotted a UFO in the sky over Geneva. The sighting lasts for 20 seconds, and there are those who had time to take photos or videos from different points in the city. The Air Force was contacted immediately, but no trace of the object was found in radar tracks. It seems like we'll never know what this strange object was, but I believe the people who saw it. Number 5. Pilot discovery. On June 18, 1979, the then pilot Marshal Giancarlo Sansoni was returning from a photographic survey. Giancarlo, who belonged to the 14 group of the 2 fighter-bomber reconnaissance wing of the Italian Air Force, was on board a G91R equipped with 4 Vitin cameras located in this way: 2 on the sides of the front of the cockpit, 1 in the front position, and the 4th at the ventral position. With these, he had carried out the photographic surveys that he had been in charge of, but while flying implying he saw something strange. He then arranged with the ground control body staff to go and identify an object that was detected by the radar. At the moment of the sighting, it occurred to him that it could be a solar UFO, but then he realized it was something different. The day was beautiful, and he soon realized that the black spot had very different characteristics. It appeared to him in the shape of a dull black fuel tank, and on its slightly flattened upper part, he noticed a fairing with 2 mustaches. This was underlying something clear and white, which in his opinion was a kind of milky white dome. The characteristics of the surface did not allow the refraction of light, and the object appeared to have a length of about 6 to 8 meters and a width of about 3 meters. Now during the sighting, which lasted about 5 minutes, Giancarlo was able to take more than 80 photographs that showed the object was always in the same frontal position or slightly angled. In fact, this thing was never completely visible from the side, and it was as if the thing wanted to aim the plane. Number 4. Factory worker. On April 24th, 1950, a factory worker named Bruno Facciani was working the late shift and stepped outside to get some fresh air on his break. Investigating a bright glowing light, which he thought was a part of a factory transformer problem, he was shocked to see a circular shape glowing object with a ladder descended from its bottom. At the top of the UFO was a greenish glow which partially obscured a light-skinned being. The unusual being appeared to be welding something on the craft. Then he said several other small alien creatures emerged from the craft, and in a moment or two the ladder began to be drawn up into the mysterious craft, and the beings began to re-enter the craft through an invisible door of some kind. The full realization of what he was witnessing sent Bruno to run away from the frightening encounter. Now as he fled, he heard a sound like that of a large beehive. One of the remaining creatures pointed a type of weapon at him, and a beam of force knocked him to the ground. Although in pain, he was able to watch the aliens as they prepared the craft to take off. The beehive-like sound increased as the object made its way into the skies and vanished from view. Now the next day, Bruno made a full report of his encounter to the police force, and there were signs still visible of the activities of the night before. Police found burn patches on the ground and indentation marks of an extremely heavy object. They also found some odd green pieces of a metal-like substance. Number 3. Green Alien. On the night of December 6, 1978, night watchman Pierre Zanfretta was on a routine patrol when he stumbled into a series of terrifying encounters with extraterrestrial beings. His car inexplicably lost power en route to a client's unoccupied home. He then glanced through his window and saw 4 lights moving in the garden of the house he was coming to inspect. Assuming that the beams were coming from burglars, he climbed from his car with his revolver and flashlight in hand. Now just as he prepared to leap out to confront these trespassers, he felt something touch his shoulder from behind. He spun around, but instead of finding a human criminal, he saw an entity that he described as being an enormous green, ugly, and frightful creature with undulating skin as though they were very fat or dressed in a loose gray tunic no less than 10 feet tall. It was flanked by 2 similar beasts. He said these beings were hairy, had greenish skin, had horns on the sides of their faces, yellow triangular eyes, and red veins embedded in their foreheads. He also described a unique self-illuminated mechanical apparatus that fit over their mouths. Now he was so shocked that he ran away, and I think that was the best option. Number 2. The abduction. In April 1962, Taylor Mario Zuccala was walking home through the woods when, at a crossroad clearing where the path crossed a small canal, he felt himself struck by a sharp gust of wind. The object, like an inverted bowl, passed overhead and came close to the ground about 6 to 7 meters away. From its underside came a cylinder which opened up, revealing a diffuse of white light from which 2 beings emerged. They were 1.5 meters tall, dressed in metallic suits, wearing helmets with antennas. He then approached Mario and led him into the empty interior of the object, which was lit by the same diffuse light. He was unable to make out any details of the interior. They then let go of him as a voice from the inner part of the object, like one amplified by a microphone and as if resounding in a vast space, spoke to him in Italian. The only part Mario could remember was a message that at the 4th moon they would return at 1 in the morning to give him a message for humanity. He was then escorted out of the object and somehow found himself outside his own door. His wife heard 4 loud knocks, which he does not remember making, and found him terrified on the front porch. And coming in at number 1 is the Whistleblower. Pentagon whistleblower David Grush, in some more baffling claims, said the Vatican was fully aware of non-human intelligence's existence and that it assisted the United States in retrieving a UFO. Making some shocking revelations, David stated that a top-secret UFO retrieval program was run by the United States for decades and added that the Vatican was involved in the first ever crash of a UFO, as per media reports. David stated that the UFO's first recovery took place in Magenta, Italy in 1933. He added that the UFO was in possession of Italian dictator Mussolini's government until 1944 to 1945, when America was tipped off by it by Pope Pius XII. He added that the UFO was partially intact and was kept at a secure airbase until it was retrieved by the US after the fascist Italy's regime collapse. 1933 was the first recovery in Europe in Magenta, Italy. They recovered a partially intact vehicle and the Italian government moved it to a secure airbase in Italy until around 1944 to 1945. The Pope back-channeled that and told the Americans what the Italians had, and we ended up scooping it, David said. While clarifying whether the Catholic Church knew about the non-human existence on Earth, David said, "Certainly." He said that his claims must be believed because I have the credentials and I was an intelligence officer. He stated that UFO sightings were widely known during Mussolini's dictatorship in Italy. Sighting. Middletown was shaken by an extraordinary event last month as residents reported witnessing a display of rotating green lights hovering above them. The inexplicable sighting, which occurred around 10:30 p.m., left many in awe and pondering the possibility of extraterrestrial activity. One individual, Caden Little, managed to capture the event on video while on Jerry Couch Boulevard. Caden described his initial reaction as a mix of fear and fascination, exclaiming, "I instantly thought like we're under attack by aliens. It was scary." Fortunately, the lights abruptly disappeared without any hostile action, providing some relief. Eyewitnesses, including Bryce Garrick, observed the lights rotating in a clockwise motion before swiftly darting across the sky and vanishing. The bewildering speed at which the lights maneuvered ruled out the possibility of drones, according to Brian Simpson, president of the Cincinnati Astronomical Society. So what was it? Who knows, but my bet is aliens. Number 9. The Coin Incident. At 7:30 p.m. on October 18, 1973, American Airlines Flight 21 encountered a UFO near Mansfield, Ohio, and reported it. This would be the first of dozens of sightings reported in the area that night. However, the most astonishing one took place 3 hours later and became known as the Coin Incident. Sometime after 10:30 p.m., an Army Reserve helicopter piloted by Captain Lawrence Coyne and a crew of 3 men was flying from Columbus to Cleveland when, somewhere around Mansfield, they noticed a red light on the horizon. They then realized that the object was heading straight for them at a high rate of speed. Coyne quickly descended to avoid collision, but as the men were preparing for impact, the object came to a halt in front of them and projected a green, pyramid-shaped beam over the helicopter. At the same time this was happening, the men reported the helicopter being pulled up and towards the UFO. However, it then let go and darted out of sight. The incident lasted 5 minutes. The men described a gray, metallic-looking dome-shaped object with a red light on one end and white light on the other. Now, interestingly, after the incident, according to one crew member, the helicopter never worked right again. Now, this whole incident was seen from the ground by a mother and her 2 children who pulled their car over to watch what was going on. They reported seeing the helicopter chasing an object that they said looked like limp, pear-shaped, and as big as a school bus. Number 8. Earliest photographs. A photo taken in St. Paris, Champaign County in 1932 is considered one of the earliest possible photographs of a UFO ever recorded. It shows George Sutton, a local resident, and what appears to be a classic UFO-shaped object over his left shoulder. Skeptics say the object is simply a street lamp, but according to the folklore that surrounds this image, there were no electric streetlights along this road in 1932, nor are any wires or poles visible in the image. Now, this photo is intriguing because it predates the flying saucer craze of the late 1940s and 50s. It was taken before the alleged Roswell UFO crash in 1947, and it was 6 years prior to the broadcast of the War of the Worlds in 1938, when some people believed aliens were attacking Earth. In other words, the person who took this photograph either captured a street lamp, a real UFO, or was way ahead of the curve in terms of pulling off a good hoax. But I'd like to think it's a real UFO. Number 7. The Carnival. As a way to raise money, Father Gregory Miller decided to host a carnival in August of 1949. The church sought help from Sergeant Donald R. Berger, and on the first night of the carnival, sometime after 8 p.m., he was operating the searchlight when it came upon a massive object in the sky. His log states the object was stationary, appearing as a glowing disc. When I moved the searchlight away, the disc continued to glow. He estimated the object to be around 25,000 feet high and reported that the sky was clear with a thin haze at altitude. More than 100 people saw the object that night, including Father Miller. Maybe nothing more would have come from this incident, but the next day, local newspapers carried stories about strange lights being reported all over Cincinnati, not just at the carnival. At least 3 major newspapers in the area ran stories about the sightings, so it definitely was something. Number 6. 86-mile police chase. In Portage Country in 1966, law enforcement officers from several jurisdictions either witnessed or chased a UFO for 86 miles into Pennsylvania. The incident is considered one of the most thoroughly documented UFO cases on record. Portage County Sheriff Deputy Dale Spar and 2nd Deputy named Wilbur Neff came upon the UFO around 5:30 a.m. on April 17th. They were investigating an abandoned vehicle and they heard a humming or buzzing noise behind them, and they turned to see a UFO hovering just above a nearby tree line. A bright cone-shaped light came from beneath the object, illuminating the ground. They called into dispatch, which told them to keep an eye on the object. Just then, the object began to quickly move away. The two decided to give chase, and near the state line, a local police officer saw the object, followed by Spar and Neff chasing it. He decided to join in on the action. However, a short time later, just as the sun was rising, Spar began to run out of gas, so he and Neff and the local police officer pulled into a gas station, where they watched the object ascend several thousand feet into the sky and then straight into outer space, and, well, that was that. Number 5. October 11th, 1973. October 11th was quite the night for Ohio residents, as there were many UFOs spotted. In Dayton, at least 15 sightings were reported. Many witnesses reported seeing objects covered with red, green, and blue lights hovering over treetops in the area. A Montgomery County Sheriff's deputy reported seeing an oblong object covered with lights that appeared stationary in the sky at treetop level for several minutes until he tried to shine his cruiser spotlight on it. It then zoomed towards him and then shot straight up in the sky. Then in Troy, according to an article in the Columbus Dispatch from October 12, 1973, titled UFO Reports Proceed Boom, on October 11th, Troy patrolman Early Thomas and about 100 Troy residents said they watched a hovering red, green, and white object move across the southeastern sky. Now, just to note, this happens to be the direction of Wright-Patterson. About 15 minutes later, law enforcement agencies in Miami, Champaign, and Logan counties received hundreds of telephone calls after a sonic boom was heard. They received more calls when a second sonic boom was heard just after midnight, and it seems like the aliens had something special planned for that day to me. Number 4. Trumbull County UFO Incident. Featured on the History Channel and numerous UFO documentaries, the Trumbull County UFO incident in northeast Ohio is exceptional because it was witnessed by numerous police officers and a 911 dispatcher, all of whom were being recorded as they spoke back and forth about the strange events unfolding the evening of December 14th, 1994. It was also seen by many members of the public as well. Now, around midnight, Trumbull County 911 began receiving calls from residents about strange low-flying lights in the sky. The dispatcher sent out Liberty Townsend police officers to investigate. One of them was Sergeant Toby Melrose, who saw a light. He got out of his car and looked up to see what he described as a giant circular-shaped object and intensely bright in the center section. It made no sound at all. The object was there for about 30 seconds before moving away. Shaken, Sergeant Melrose decided to chase the object, as did many other police officers in the area. At least 14 law enforcement officers saw the object that night, with all of them discussing it openly on their radios. Number 3. 1973. There were many UFO sightings in 1973 in Ohio and its surrounding states. For example, in Columbus on September 30th, a Franklin County man claims to have discovered a landing site near his home after seeing a strange object in the sky. Weeds at the alleged site are crushed to the ground in a semi-oval area 20 by 30 feet wide. The man says the object whooped down in a zigzag pattern and and drop below the trees. There are several dozen sightings of strange objects in the sky reported in the area that night. Then in Middletown on October 7th, a giant orange-colored cigar-shaped object with 5 discs following it and making no sound is reported flying over the city at 10 p.m. Many people see it, and Wright-Patterson receives numerous calls. Now, these are just 2 examples of that year, but there are many, many more. Number 2. Circleville. On August 26, 2022, Pete Hartinger said UFOs were spotted in the area. An expert on the topic who has seen a UFO with his own eyes, Pete said several people reported seeing UFOs between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m., including a man who saw something in the sky as he was traveling on US 23 north of Circleville. He saw strange lights, and going on down, he saw some more strange lights. He knows some other people who saw them too, he said. The man said it wasn't right the way the lights were acting. The lights came down, hit the ground, and went back up, so forget about them being flares. Pete said the man, who wishes to remain anonymous, reported what he saw to the Roundtown UFO Society, a local group dedicated to studying these matters. Anybody who has seen strange, mysterious lights that have been in the sky, please let us know, he said. He said at least half a dozen people saw the lights. One person said they saw orange lights over the fairgrounds, he said, and another person said he saw some military aircraft coming in after he saw those lights. Were they coming in to investigate, or what? Since 1947, there have been several sightings of UFOs in the Circleville area, which is strange. And coming in at number 1 is Ohio is a beacon. According to the Mutual UFO Network of Ohio, MUFON, the state ranks among the top 10 states in UFO reports. Thomas Wortman with the MUFON said, "It's all sorts of things we get. We get the individual who is out walking their dog at night who reports seeing unusual lights that they just can't explain. They see the lights for a few seconds or minutes and they just want an answer." Now, the majority of these reports come from Northeast Ohio, and Thomas says about 80% of what comes in the agency can be explained, but about 20% and up being classified as UFOs. Now, if you're waiting for the government to admit that aliens do exist, don't hold your breath, because the Time reports that the Pentagon isn't going to say that. But my question is, what is so special about Ohio?
And we're going to start things off with Point Dume underwater base. So off the coast of Point Dume in Malibu, there seems to be this mysterious structure lying about 6 miles underwater. Images captured on Google Earth show an oval-shaped object resting on the seabed floor. Looks like it has a large flat top and what seems to be pillars or columns. Looking at it, it definitely looks like the entrance to something. It sits about 2,000 feet beneath the ocean surface, spanning nearly 3 miles in width, and some speculate that it could be more than just a naturally formed structure. And yes, some even think it could be an underwater alien base. Jimmy Church, who hosts a California-based radio show called Fade to Black, was pretty excited about the images, stating, "My first impression was that it was Greek. It looked artificial and didn't look natural. When you're looking at it from above, it's a nearly perfect oval shape. In the natural surroundings, nothing is symmetrical. Everything is eroded and covered in rocks and sloping and peaking. And right here, for 2 miles, it is a perfect oval with a black separation or outline to it. It just stands out that it has to be some type of roof. It's not unlike a dome stadium or a covered indoor racetrack or an Olympic arena. It's got that feel to it. It looks like a perfect oval man-made structure sitting on a construction site." Next up, we have the Solomon Islands UFOs. There have been some very strange things said to go on here for hundreds and hundreds of years, and not only have locals claimed to see strange lights in the sky, but also coming up from under the water as well, which has led to a pretty intense theory that there could be an underwater alien base there. There have always been local legends of monstrous giants on the islands, 10-foot tall, hairy creatures with flat noses and glowing red eyes. That, combined with the reports of strange lights in the sky, moving with incredible speed and agility, could mean there may be some kind of connection here. You see, some of these lights and strange flying objects have been seen descending down into the trees of the Guadalcanal or rising up from the ocean and zipping around before diving back down. There are also legends that these giants that are said to live on the island move around through subterranean tunnels. So some speculate that beneath the surface of the ocean is this hidden structure where extraterrestrial beings may be conducting their activities. Next up, we have High Brazil, a small mythological island off the coast of Ireland. According to Celtic folklore, this island is said to lie off the west coast of the country, appearing only every 7 years, usually surrounded by mist. The island is often described as a paradise with advanced technology and a society living in total harmony with nature. Sailors and explorers have reported spotting the island for centuries, claiming to have seen strange creatures and these glowing god-like beings there. Maps from the 14th to the 19th centuries often included High Brazil, but its exact location was always a bit of a mystery. Now, of course, it sounds like complete folklore, which Celtic culture is absolutely full of, but what if there's something else going on here? Well, some have suggested that the island's appearing and disappearing could have an extraterrestrial connection. The idea is that aliens could be using advanced cloaking technology or have a hidden base on or beneath the island, and the mysterious creatures that some sailors claimed to have seen on the island do sound like they could be alien-like, but it's still a total mystery as to what they'd be doing over there. Next up on the list, we have strange skulls that were found in an underwater cave in Mexico. So in 2012, divers were exploring a cenote and the Yucatan Peninsula where they came across two chambers full of human bones, and some of these bones were human skulls, but there was something off about them. They were elongated. Now, the ancient Maya were said to have performed human sacrifices in the area, and skull deformation was also practiced in various parts of Mexico way back when. There are theories as to why, but nothing entirely concrete. One idea is that high-ranking members of society had elongated skulls. Some say that people's skulls were elongated just to differentiate certain groups from one another, but there's also the theory that these skulls never belonged to human beings at all. Pretty common knowledge, of course, that there are tons of conspiracy theories surrounding the ancient Maya, including the presence of extraterrestrials that may have helped them construct all their intricate advanced cities. So could these skulls have belonged to these supposed alien beings? It's possible. Next up, we have the Lake Baikal incident. So this lake in southern Siberia is the world's largest freshwater lake by volume. It's incredibly deep, and there are some pretty eerie stories about it. First of all, there's all the mysterious lights that are reported, not just hovering or flying above it, but also coming from the depths of the water. And there's a very creepy story that was supposedly an attempted cover-up by the Russian government. So in 1982, a team of Navy divers were doing a routine diving exercise in the lake when a number of them started spotting something pretty disturbing. There were all these figures deep under the water. They were tall and slender, well over 6 feet tall, and wearing what looked to be silver suits. Those suits could have also been silvery scales. They also had large, circular, glowing, unblinking eyes. The creatures began chasing after the divers, or swimming after them, rather, and the divers panicked and then swam back up to the surface, and they reported what they'd seen to their superiors, but that's where the story ends. The existence of the strange creatures has never been confirmed or denied. Next up, we have underwater alien bases in Alaska. So claims of alleged alien bases lurking beneath the waters off the coast of Alaska have been around for quite a while, but in recent years, the idea of them has become more of a popular thing, mostly thanks to Ancient Aliens. Thank you, Ancient Aliens. But apparently, there are even eyewitness accounts dating back several decades, which have been mostly undisclosed until recently. UFOologists and UFO enthusiasts have now been turning their attention to the mysterious activities in the waters of Alaska. One incident dates back to 1945, when crew members of a ship reported spotting an unidentified craft. Researchers, including members of MUFON, or the Mutual UFO Network, which is a non-profit organization that studies reported UFO sightings, they think it's possible that extraterrestrial beings have been constructing bases beneath the ocean's surface, and that's because there are tons of reports of UFO movements over the water. There were also a number of UFO sightings in the 40s that weren't disclosed to the public at the time. These undisclosed reports allegedly provide evidence that there are extraterrestrial entities operating in the waters off the coast of Alaska. This next story comes to us from Reddit, and although what this person saw wasn't technically under the water, it was floating just above it, and it's a pretty fascinating account. The story comes to us from user Keslow, who writes, I used to live in Charleston, South Carolina back around 2006, and I had a job that had me leaving home at about 4 a.m. I lived in a bad part of town near the International Airport Joint Base, so when I left, I did a scan of the area before getting into my car. One morning, I stepped out of my home to do my scan and noticed that there were thin, wispy clouds flowing in off the ocean. Basically, it was a thin fog, about 1,000 to 1,500 feet up, moving like a river. I also noticed at this point that there were two effing moons. One is obscured by the thin clouds, our real moon, and the other is most definitely under the clouds. It was a sphere of glowing white light. It made no sound and did not move. After about 2 minutes, it bolted eastward towards the ocean. The glowing light faded quickly right as it took off as well. I've seen planes move near the speed of sound, and this thing went from 0 to like 3,000 miles per hour instantly. No acceleration. Much faster than the speed of sound with no sonic boom. I hope I don't see it again, especially on the water. I always wondered if it bolted because they saw me watching them. Next up, we have the strange reports of a large disc-like object being spotted in the Indian Ocean. Apparently, as far back as 1873, ships sailing the Indian Ocean from the Persian Gulf to the South China Sea have reported spotting a massive mile-wide disc passing beneath their boats, accompanied by large, rotating lights. One of the earliest documented sightings happened on March 23rd of 1873, when the ship Adelaide traversed the South China Sea. Witnesses reported floating over a huge, glowing circular object beneath the ocean's surface. On May 15th, 1879, the crew of the HMS Vulture described the sighting of two large Ferris wheels spinning in opposite directions. The spokes of these wheels were reported to be 25 feet wide, with 100 feet of space between them. There have been tons of these reports in various locations in the Indian Ocean, over the years. On April 4th, 1901, for example, in the Persian Gulf, the crew of the SS Kilwa claimed to see rays of light emanating from an underwater disc-like object. And even in 1943, in the Persian Gulf, a sailor named Matthew Mangle reported a huge glowing disc beneath the water's surface, pacing his ship. And these are just a handful of examples. And coming in at second place is the Michigan Stonehenge. So in 2007, a professor of underwater archaeology, Mark Hawley, made a pretty incredible discovery. It was this arrangement of stones lying on the lake bed, looking a lot like Stonehenge in England. The stones are laid out in a circular pattern, and some even appear to be arranged in a line. They're about 40 feet below the surface of the lake. So what was the purpose of this formation? Could it be the remnants of an ancient civilization? Could extraterrestrials have constructed it thousands of years ago? They look like they've been placed in a pretty precise pattern. Doesn't look to be natural forming to me. And of course, there's also a rock with a mastodon carved into it. Hard to believe something like that would be created naturally. What's also really fascinating is that these stones are believed to be about 9,000 years old, predating Stonehenge by about 4,000 years. And finally, it's only natural that we finish things off with what has to be the most famous strange object discovered deep beneath the sea, the Baltic Sea anomaly. So back in the summer of 2011, a team of Swedish treasure hunters didn't come across any treasure in terms of monetary gain anyway, but they did find something pretty cool, a sonar image that seems to show a strange UFO-like object on the sea floor. Peter Lindbergh, the leader of the treasure hunting team, would be so awesome just to be able to say you're the leader of a treasure hunting team. I could say that and I'd just be digging through my backyard finding nothing. But this guy actually goes out on boats and submarines and does it. I didn't get that job. Anyway, he's the leader of Ocean X and was pretty astonished by what he had found, saying the object definitely didn't look like a natural formation. And even though a number of researchers have come out and said it probably is a natural formation, I still get excited looking at this thing. I don't know, I'm just not entirely convinced. I'm on the fence about this one. But what do you guys think? Alien craft, ancient artifact, just some mundane natural formation? Let us know down in them comments.
If you enjoyed this video about real convincing UFO cases, then you have to check out this video next. It's about Area 51 leaks that you need to know about. Click the video now.